Of all the objects Voldemort chose to hide a fragment of his shattered soul inside, none caused more suffering, more chaos, and more psychological damage than this one small piece of jewelry. A locket, something you would normally give to someone you love, and yet in the hands of the Dark Lord, it became one of the most dangerous artifacts in the entire wizarding world. Today we are diving deep into the full story of Salazar Slytherin's locket, how it became a Horcrux, why Voldemort chose it, and how it nearly tore apart the Golden Trio from the inside out. Let's start at the very beginning, because the locket's history actually predates Voldemort himself. The object originally belonged to Salazar Slytherin, one of the 4 founders of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Over centuries it passed through hands, and eventually ended up connected to the Gaunt family, the last known descendants of Slytherin himself. If you've seen our earlier videos on the Gaunt family, you'll know they were a deeply troubled, impoverished, and violently proud pure-blood family living in squalor while clinging to their supposed noble lineage. The locket became part of that family's legacy. Now, here is where young Tom Riddle enters the picture. His mother, Merope Gaunt, was from that very family. She had the locket in her possession before her life fell apart completely. After abandoning her magic and dying shortly after giving birth, Merope's belongings were gone. The locket eventually resurfaced in the antique and dark artifact trade, making its way to Borgin and Burke's, the notorious shop in Nocturne Alley. And who worked at Borgin and Burke's during the late 1940s? A young, charming, and deeply dangerous Tom Riddle. During his time at that shop, Tom encountered a woman named Hepzibah Smith, a collector of rare magical treasures who had acquired 2 extraordinary items. One was the Hufflepuff cup, the other was Slytherin's locket. Tom was transfixed. For him, these were not just pretty antiques. They were trophies, connections to the greatest wizarding bloodlines in history, and perfect vessels for his darkest ambitions. He stole both artifacts after murdering Hepzibah and framing her house elf for the crime. With the locket in his possession, he committed murder again, and used that act of violence to tear a piece of his own soul away, sealing it forever inside the locket. Think about that for a second. He chose Slytherin's locket specifically because of the connection to his own heritage. Voldemort, born of a witch who disguised herself and a muggle father who wanted nothing to do with her, was obsessed with proving his magical greatness. Salazar Slytherin was the ultimate symbol of pure-blood supremacy and serpentine dark magic. Putting part of his soul into that locket was, in his mind, a statement of who he believed himself to be. Not the abandoned orphan Tom Riddle, but the heir of Slytherin himself. Decades passed, and Voldemort eventually decided to hide this particular Horcrux somewhere he considered impenetrable. He chose a sea cave, one that he had actually discovered as a child during a traumatic trip from the orphanage. The location already carried a dark significance. He flooded the path to the cave with enchantments, surrounded the hiding place with inferi, those horrifying reanimated corpses lurking beneath black water, and placed the locket inside a stone basin filled with a potion that caused unbearable suffering and hallucinations to anyone who drank it. To test these defenses, Voldemort used Kreacher, the house elf belonging to the Black family. Here is where things get genuinely heartbreaking. Kreacher was forced to drink the potion, suffer through its torment, and was left in the cave to die at the hands of the inferi. But Voldemort made a critical error in his arrogance. He assumed house elves were too insignificant to matter. Because Kreacher had been ordered to return home after completing his task, he was able to disapparate from the cave, something wizards cannot do in that location. Kreacher survived and reported everything to his master at the time, Regulus Black. Regulus had been a Death Eater, a young man swept up in the ideology of pure-blood supremacy that his entire family worshipped. But when he learned what Voldemort had done to Kreacher, something fundamentally shifted inside him. This was not the glorious cause he had signed up for. This was a master willing to use a loyal servant as a disposable test subject and leave him to die without a second thought. Regulus made a decision that would cost him his life. He returned to that cave with Kreacher, drank the potion himself, retrieved the real locket, and told Kreacher to leave and destroy the Horcrux. He never escaped the cave. The Inferi took him. Kreacher, however loyal and obedient, simply could not destroy the locket. No matter what he tried, nothing worked. So the locket sat in the Black family home at Grimmauld Place for years, largely unnoticed. When Harry and the Weasleys spent time cleaning out that house before the events of Order of the Phoenix, the locket was there, likely tossed into a rubbish pile or set aside among other strange objects. None of them recognized it for what it was. After Sirius died and the house was no longer under his protection, a rather shifty wizard named Mundungus Fletcher helped himself to various items from Grimmauld Place. The locket went with him. Mundungus, never the most principled of individuals, eventually traded or sold it to someone who wanted it badly enough to take it by force. That someone was Dolores Umbridge, who was at this point a senior official in Voldemort's puppet Ministry of Magic. She wore the locket around her neck as a badge of status and power, not even knowing what it truly was. This is where Dumbledore's separate investigation intersects with the story, because while all of this was happening, Dumbledore had already identified the cave as the hiding place of a Horcrux. Fatally weakened after destroying the Gaunt family ring, he postponed his investigation until he had no more time to spare. He brought Harry to that cave, made him promise to keep feeding him the potion no matter how badly it affected him, and drank every last drop. What they retrieved was not the real locket. It was a fake. Inside was a small note from someone who signed only with the initials R.A.B., a message to Voldemort saying the real locket had been taken and would be destroyed. Dumbledore endured all of that suffering for nothing. He died that night on the astronomy tower. Harry was left holding a fake locket and a mystery. The story of tracking down the real locket only came together later, once Harry, Ron, and Hermione were living in hiding at Grimmauld Place, and Kreacher finally told them everything. The bond between Harry and Kreacher genuinely shifted after this revelation. Harry understood that Kreacher had served Regulus faithfully, had carried an impossible burden for years, and deserved to be treated with dignity. When Harry gave Kreacher the fake locket as a memento of Regulus, the elf transformed. His devotion to Harry became absolute. It was Kreacher who tracked down Mundungus and brought him to Grimmauld Place. From Fletcher they learned the locket was with Umbridge at the Ministry. The trio organized a daring infiltration, disguising themselves using Polyjuice potion, navigating the corrupted Ministry, and ultimately snatching the locket from around Umbridge's neck. They escaped, but in the chaos, one of the Death Eaters grasped onto their location, forcing them to flee and begin their long, exhausting journey across Britain without a fixed base. During those months of wandering, whoever wore the locket felt its influence gnawing at them. It amplified every negative feeling, every doubt, every fear. It was designed to do exactly that. Ron suffered the most. He was already struggling with guilt, with feeling like the least important member of the group, with worries about his family. The locket fed those insecurities until they swelled into something unbearable. He eventually abandoned Harry and Hermione during a particularly bitter argument, something that haunted all three of them. When Ron finally returned, guided back by a mysterious silver doe Patronus that Harry followed through a dark forest until it led him to a frozen pond containing the sword of Gryffindor. He arrived just in time to drag Harry from the ice. Harry had jumped in to retrieve the sword, wearing the locket, which immediately tried to strangle him and drag him under. Ron pulled him out and saved his life. Harry then made a deliberate choice. He asked Ron to be the one to destroy the locket. The reasons were layered and real. Ron had saved him. Ron had suffered more from the Locket's influence than anyone. And Ron had always stood in the background while others received recognition. This moment belonged to him. Ron placed the locket on a rock, raised the sword, and Harry opened it using Parseltongue. What emerged from the locket was calculated cruelty, a projection of the soul fragment that whispered every fear Ron had ever buried, showing him visions of Harry and Hermione and all the ways he felt inadequate. But Ron held firm. He brought the sword down, and the Horcrux was destroyed. That destruction was about more than just eliminating one piece of Voldemort's fragmented soul. It was proof that the friendship between these three people was stronger than the darkest magic in existence. The Locket tried to break them, and failed. And that made everything that came afterward possible. If you want to keep exploring the secrets behind every Horcrux Voldemort ever created, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. There is so much more of this story still to uncover.